Today, people have been discussing a new issue. How serious really is the threat that's posed by Harry and Meghan to the continuation of the monarchy? According to royal commentator Tom Sykes, I think it has turned into a serious threat, or more correctly, a threat which should be taken seriously, as although the monarchy will continue for many generations, this present attack is somewhat akin to a medieval usurpation, so needs to be carefully handled by the palace. He went on to say, what started out as an Ocean's 11 type sting by a grifter and her associates caught the eye of some powerful and influential people who saw how their own strategic interests aligned with the grifter's Ponzi scheme mentality. Accordingly, these big dogs inserted their own staff into Team Meghan. Since then, she has been silently protected, which explains why there are never any consequences for her actions. Who else has ever lied so casually, blatantly, and consistently on the world stage, behaved so badly, so stupidly, yet nothing ever happens to her? Then name another person with absolutely no discernible talent who is continually paid tens of millions regardless of the quality or quantity of material produced, while regularly receiving awards. It's inexplicable unless one lifts the heavy stone and peers at the insects swarming underneath. The ruling dynasties in U.S. politics absolutely hate constitutional monarchies. They would just love to see a UK republic with one of their own, like Tony Blair, installed as the president. So when you think about the continuing course of Meghan's behavior, focusing on the real outcomes of that behavior, it is not random. In fact, a pretty clear and concerning strategy emerges: the destabilization of the British monarchy and the Commonwealth of Nations. Project Meghan wants to cause instability, and so the weapon they're using is the culture war that was begun in the digital pollution capital of the world, Hollywood and Silicon Valley, and Meghan is their poster girl. But it's not well understood how the King and Parliament is the bedrock of the British Constitution, so attempts to sabotage and destabilize the monarchy is an attempt at regime change. Let's look at the contenders. In one corner, we've got a long line of international dignitaries. They are respected in most circles around the world, with centuries of adapting and improving with the evolving political and diplomatic landscape, including the very unimperial release of territories in recent years. And then in another corner, we've got a member of that long line that is simply not like the others. This member has quite a long history of publicly marginalizing and minimizing racial and religious groups, and then alienating those people groups for which the family has repeatedly apologized. This member also has a history of sexual activity that is inappropriate in most company, but was also protected from public scorn by his co-workers. This member experienced trauma at an early age, and as many people do, failed to really develop emotionally thereafter. This complete lack of sensitivity and emotional immaturity makes him such an easy target, and he was definitely targeted by a wannabe with the instincts of a stray cat. Is she capable of bullying most people? For sure, through sheer power of will if nothing else. Her father taught her that, you know what, she's above the rules, they don't apply to her. So she's going to make her own box on every form she fills out. Does she have the power to ruin a family? Well, how many times has she answered that question in full view of the public? But is she capable of really taking down a historical institution? No. Maybe she can cause the aging monarch so much stress that he wants to retire earlier. But there are two patriots in line behind that monarch, and they are not aging. And they're also not opposed to directly addressing threats to their country or to their family. Maybe I have skipped a few bits though, because the only question I still have is whether or not Harry's going to find himself homeless in the US. Allow me to share my opinion with you. Even though a lot of what he has said has me confused because I didn't understand what else could be lurking in the background, I was kind of always assuming that this was just Meghan with her fantasies and her lacking any mental capacity to understand what is required when you're a member of the royal family. But anyway, I have read stuff that has convinced me that there are people lurking in the background and they are bankrolling the Sussexes to continue in their revenge plots. For a long time now, though, I have been suspicious that there is something happening behind the scenes with Meghan Markle and her headhunting of Harry and her full frontal assault on the monarchy. There are just way too many contradictions in this story, especially about how they met, etc. The one that I cannot accept is that blind date story. As far as I understand, when you go on a blind date with somebody, you don't know anything about the person you're meeting up with. But apparently, Meghan told a friend that she was meeting Prince Harry. How could that be a blind date then? It doesn't work. There are just so many things that don't add up, so many weird things. And as people have pointed out, the stuff that Meghan is getting away with is just unbelievable. There is just something sketchy in all of this. I mean, something stinks. It is time for the monarchy and the government to take off the kid gloves and finally do something real. Or I'm afraid that Harry might get his wish. No throne for his older brother William. Meghan should never have been allowed to step into the royal family from the very beginning, though. I know that for sure. And if there are people hiding behind the scenes with undesirable motives, shouldn't they have been pounced on after security checks? I mean, shouldn't somebody have done something to prevent this type of intervention? The progressive Democrats are so excited about the continuing viability of what they consider to be a class-ridden white establishment that has been supported by the twin pillars of colonialism and the slave trade. But they are snakes, so they're going to stay hidden in the grass while Joe Biden is up there in the White House. Of course, he wouldn't dare attend the coronation. The very moment that Joe Biden passes away or decides he doesn't want to run again, those snakes are going to come out from underneath the rocks and they're going to have their time in the sun. But anyway, I don't accept this idea that they are a real threat. It seems like Harry is a one-trick pony. He only can talk about himself and the horrible life that he experienced as a privileged royal. He is currently sixth in line to the throne after those children, and he's going to fall even further as those kids grow up and get married and have their own kids. Harry ran away from the UK for the US, so he's probably not going to be coming back in the foreseeable future. After all, he supposedly has a young family to look after, and of course, he's busy writing more books about how horrible his life was, trapped in a palace, ignored by his father, his brother, and of course his late grandmother, as we heard from recent interviews given in tabloid television stations. I do think that over time, he and his family are going to fade into obscurity. Americans are getting sick of them. They're just a couple of people who whine about how horrible their life has been, while at the same time they're living in a McMansion in California. Oh yeah, life is so hard for you, Hollywood Harry. Let's think, though, about all the tests the monarchy has been put through and survived. A king turned his back on the people of his country and took off with his mistress. Princess Anne's husband had a child with another woman. We saw those photos of Fergie getting her toes sucked by her lover while she was still married to Andrew. We can't forget Diana's interview, Fergie's interview, Andrew's interview, and none of this has posed a real threat to the continuation of the monarchy. People do seem to like accusing Harry and Meghan of all kinds of real damage, but I would assume that photos of my daughter-in-law's affair in the papers, my son-in-law having a child while still married, both my son and his wife having affairs, and my other son being close friends with a pedophile and posing for a photo with one of his girls is quite a bit more scandalous than a couple of toddlers whining and complaining.